Hello, and welcome to the My Heart and Mind podcast, where it's all about creating the feel-good mindset so you can make the most of every moment and reap the benefits of getting the most happiness out of life. And now, over to your host, Sally Crawley.
Welcome to episode 13 of the My Heart and Mind podcast. Today I'm talking to Sara. She was fit and healthy and ate a good diet. She had been experiencing regular headaches, stress, and at one point thought her blood pressure machine must have been broken. She was living in Bristol, and one day she left for a meeting in London. She had an early telephone call at the station and then went on to her business meeting, which was the reason for the travel. She has a sense of dread and indigestion, but she doesn't want to draw attention to herself. She continued all day until the end of the meeting when a friend mentioned she didn't look too well at all. She was taken to hospital, but they really didn't think that she was a candidate for a heart attack, so they focused on bringing her blood pressure down. Sara was indeed having a heart attack, and it was caused by a blood clot. She was in disbelief. How could she be having a heart attack? She has 2 young children. At first she was so poorly the distance didn't make much difference, but as time passed she felt a lot better and she missed her partner and her children. She's grateful that technology allowed her to stay in touch and normalise things for the kids. Sara sees that her heart attack was quite fortuitous, as whilst she did have an angioplasty, she didn't have any stents, but they did find that she had a bicuspid valve. You can find more about that in the episode. She feels that this is lucky because while she's young now, she can keep herself healthy and fit with exercise along with managing her stress levels. If it hadn't been found till later in life, her prognosis might have been very different. We talk about how at first Sara was feeling okay. During her recovery, everything felt fine. But somehow, some 6 months later, she was beginning to find things a little bit more difficult emotionally, and she had lots of bouts of tears. She talks to us about going back to work and what that feels like with your friends, your colleagues in the HR department. She also gives her tips and tricks about how she stays happy and buoyant, and interestingly, it includes her favourite shot glass. She also talks about a book that she found published by the British Heart Foundation and how it helped her explain to her children about her heart attack. Again, make sure that you drop in and have a listen as I now hand over to Sara. So welcome, Sara. Welcome to the show. Thank you for joining me on the podcast today. I'd like you to introduce yourself to our listeners and just tell them a little bit about your life in general before you had your heart event.
Okay. I'm Sara. I'm 44 years old, soon to be 45 in a couple of weeks. And I know I don't want to be 45. No. But I live in Bristol and I live with my family. So I've got a partner, Stu, and I live with my 2 children, Sky, who's 7, and Logan, who's 9. They're both really cheeky. We're a family of redheads, so you can imagine how it is in our house when it all kicks off. And I work as a commercial manager for the civil service. So that's kind of what I do for a living, yeah.
Did you have any health issues before you had your heart attack?
So not knowingly at the time. I've always had migraines. I've had migraines since I was about 4. I'm one of those lucky people. So I've always kind of had those. But I was kind of relatively fit and healthy. I sort of worked out, probably like everyone could be a bit healthier. About 18 months before the heart attack, I was starting to get loads of headaches. And just honestly, you could measure me against a Dulux colour chart. I'd go really red if I was stressed or if I was really hot. And I just started getting neck ache and backache and everything. But I was so busy at work and so stressed at work because we were going through a change programme and we were sort of fighting for our jobs in a way that I just just sort of ploughed on really. And to the point that, I don't know, I'd wake up with a headache, you go to bed with a headache and you don't really realise at the time that it's kind of there, you just get used to it. And then subsequently, I was diagnosed with really bad hypertension, so really high blood pressure. And I had a blood pressure machine I did take my blood pressure, and it was always so high that I thought the machine was broken, because it was always kind of in the sort of 170s sort of level, and I completely thought it was broken. So yeah, so that was, but before then, relatively well. That was about 18 months before really that I started feeling like that.
Yeah. You were blaming the machine for being wrong.
Yeah.
I think it's very much a case of, actually, I don't want to believe that, isn't it, as well?
It was, and I knew something must have been wrong, because it's not normal to wake up with headaches and stuff all the time. But when you're really busy at work, and I've got 2 young kids, so this was a couple of years ago, so they were even younger, and so I kept saying, I'll just sort it out next week. And and I just sort of kept going really. But it got to the point where I sort of have to go outside at work. I go outside just to cool off, because I was just getting really hot, just sort of sat there, and I'd go, oh my god, and I was like, oh my god, is this the early menopause or something? I was literally just like, having to go outside, and my partner was constantly going, like, you need to get that looked at and sorted. But apart from that, relatively fit and healthy really, apart from the really high blood pressure.
Do you want to tell us what happened on the day of your heart attack?
I was going to a meeting in London. So obviously I said I live in Bristol. So I go to London relatively often for work. The meeting itself was for a workshop to tell us all about an assessment centre that we were going to have to take to keep our jobs as part of the change programme. So a stressful kind of meeting anyway. Mm. And I had another, looking back now, I was ridiculous, but I had another meeting, a telephone call at the train station at about 7:30 or 8 o'clock in the morning, because that's the only time I could fit it in. So really, really busy day. And all day, I just felt really knackered. I kind of, when you wake up and you have that sort of really anxious exam tummy, that's how I sort of describe it, that kind of weird. So I had that all day, but I just thought, it's just because I'm worried about the workshop, and it's just a busy day. So I didn't think anything of it. Anyway,
it was very stressful, the whole situation for you at that time. Yeah.
It was really stressful, and and obviously got to the meeting. So there was a big meeting. There was about 25 of us in there, but I knew pretty much everyone in there. And meeting started, and the fire alarm went off, or there was a security alarm or something. So we all had to vacate the building. And as I stood up, I just remember feeling like, oh God, that's really bad indigestion, but really suddenly like an onset of it. And when you're there, like, oh God, that is really bad. And I started searching my bag for indigestion tablets and all of that. And then we all went outside, did the worst thing, as I know now, for if you're having a heart attack, which is just walk around, instead of staying still, just walking around. But I was pretending, I don't kind of like to draw attention to myself. So I was kind of not really mentioning it to anybody. And then it started to get worse, and I started to get really clammy, and just feeling, the worst thing for me was the sickness. I just felt so sick, and my heart was going so fast I couldn't stop it. So this was going on probably for about 45 minutes, because the meeting actually started again, and I just kept going. But by this point I was panicking, because I think that sort of sense of dread, like something was wrong, but I didn't quite know what. And I just started panicking, and I was kind of like, I don't know what to do. And the meeting finished, I didn't remember any of it. And then my friend kind of looked at me, she was sat next to me, and she just said that I looked grey, as in not even white, just grey.
Right, yeah. And
at that point, I think I just burst into tears and said, I don't feel very well, actually. I was very sort of British about it. I was like, I don't think I feel very well.
Do you think somebody might help me if that's possible?
It was. I was a bit like, if it's not too much trouble, could somebody sort of get me some first aid or something? And what the funny thing, and I look back on it now, and it's the things you remember. So the funny thing was, every woman in there must have an emergency cereal bar, because as soon as I said I don't feel very well, and literally 1,000 cereal bars came flying at me from across the table. So obviously everyone's like, her blood sugar's low or something, But yeah, and first aid came, and they called an ambulance, really, and I was taken to St Thomas's.
All right, okay.
Which is lovely. If you ever have to go anywhere for that sort of thing, St Thomas's is a lovely hospital to go to. Yeah, so that was kind of it. So I think it was a weird day, and I think looking back now, I was told by one of the cardiac nurses that actually that feeling of anxiety is quite common before a heart attack. That kind of, you don't really know, but something feels a bit odd. And looking back, that could have been it. But so that's kind of how it happened.
So Bristol to London, that's a huge difference. How did you feel about being so far from home, and your husband and kids as well?
So I was sat in they take you into resus, don't they? Even though I was conscious and everything, I was taken into resus. I was texting my partner, but they kind of kept telling me, well, it's not likely to be a heart attack because you're not, you don't fit the description of somebody that would be having a heart attack. So I kind of felt a bit like calm about it, because I was like, okay, I'm in the best place. I'm obviously not having a heart attack because everyone's telling me I'm not. So we just need to get it sorted. So I was quite calm. And then all of a sudden, a couple of hours later, and actually they were more concerned about my blood pressure because it was 220 or something. So they were more concerned about getting my blood pressure down. That was their biggest concern. So they were so concerned about that they stopped mentioning heart attack, actually. The main thing was, let's give her a drip and get her blood pressure down. Anyway, so then they just came in and said, oh, just to confirm, you have had a heart attack. But they said it such matter-of-factly. And I just remember the first thing I said was, oh, but I can't have had a heart attack because I've got kids, And they were like, well, unfortunately, that's just the way. I think I was in denial. Oh, no, you're wrong. This can't be possible. Mm-hmm. And then I just felt very, very lonely because I had nobody with me. I was kind of sat in resus on my own, and they had to go out quickly. They sort of gave me the news. They were quite nice about it and everything, but they had to go. And I remember feeling like my family could have been a million miles away because I was suddenly very lonely, sat there, literally blubbing, my eyes out because I just didn't know what to do. And I couldn't really process it because they kind of been saying it's very unlikely that you've had one. So I couldn't really process it. And I remember texting Stu and kind of going, oh, they think I've had a heart attack. Of course, he phoned up straight away, and I think he spoke to the nurse or something because I was kind of like, but and I remember going, well, do you think that I'll be able to go home tonight or something? And they were like, no, you won't be going home tonight. And then it sort of hit me then, and I suddenly thought, but I'm in London and I've got nothing with me. I've got my work stuff, and that's literally it. And then I was in for 6 days, all in all, because it was a blood clot that caused the heart attack, so they had to dissolve that before I could leave. So I was on warfarin and for that week. Mm-hmm. So I couldn't get home. So in that 6 days, it was a mixture of emotions. The first 2 days, I was so ill. I became ill because of them bringing the blood pressure down. To be fair, it sounds really horrible. I didn't care whether my family were there or not. I felt so awful that it was kind of to hell with them. I just feel sick. I can't even deal with anything. And then slowly it was really hard because Stu could come in to visit me occasionally, but obviously he had to come back and forth, and he had the kids. So I didn't see the children, so it's the longest I've ever been without seeing them. But after the first couple of days, I would video call them, and what I did was kind of show them round the ward so that they could see that it was okay, that I was somewhere nice. The person opposite me waved at them.
Oh, lovely.
I showed them where the tea making facilities were, because I became the tea maker for the ward because I was able to go up and down. And I showed my daughter the view outside St Thomas's, which is the Thames, so it's not a bad view. And she said, oh, are you looking around London, Mummy? And I was like, no, I wish I was looking around London. So it was, and I became quite lonely towards the end, and I was desperate to go. And every time they thought I'd be able to go, something else would come up, my blood hadn't got thin enough, or they had to then do another test, which they, decided on. So I kind of got my hopes up, and then they go, oh, you'll be in here for another couple of days. So it was really, really hard. But to be honest, and Stu could only come up a couple of times. So at the weekend, everyone had their visitors, and I obviously didn't have any visitors or anything. So that was quite tough.
Yeah, it's a good job we have technology though, because it's in the video, it's a bit of a lifesaver in a way, because the kids weren't so scared because they, as you said, you've been away from them for the first time for a long time.
Yeah, and they could see that I was in a friendly environment, and they could see that I had cups of tea and stuff. I honestly think Sky thought I was just off on a jolly for 6 days, and I was just and I was very careful not to show, because I still had I had a lot of bruising because of the angiogram, and I don't take blood very well, so I bruised. So I was very careful to kind of cover up my arms so they didn't get scared and everything like that.
As I say, you mentioned that they needed to bust the clot that you had, and you just mentioned an angiogram. So, what did you have medically done? So they got rid of the clot, and you went in. Did you have any stents fitted or anything?
No. So my actual heart itself is absolutely fine. My cholesterol and everything's fine. There's no sort of deposits or anything there. It was literally a blood clot that got in there, which could have been caused by the blood pressure, which is probably the most likely scenario, or could just be a random blood clot that found its way to my heart. They won't know for sure, really. So no stents, had the angiogram, and had some drips to try and bust the clot a little bit, and then warfarin, which I was on for a year after that, to get rid of the clot, basically.
Okay. So what are the outcomes, as in what did they say? Is it likely to happen again, or was it a one-off, do they think?
They don't. So the medication that they put me on, I guess they put most people with heart attacks, they've got the classic suite of heart attack meds. They think means that it's not likely to happen again. They don't know for sure. They kind of gave me instructions to watch out for like blood clots again. So if I get any pains anywhere, that kind of stuff, to pay attention to anything like that. But they don't necessarily think that it is. So but they just don't know. So they don't know if it was the blood pressure. They said that is the most likely. So the biggest thing for them is to keep my blood pressure low.
Yeah. So
I'm on the blood pressure meds, and it does keep my blood pressure low, too low sometimes. But so I think for them, that's the main way to control it, is just and stress. They basically said to me, I know it's really hard, but you've got to try and keep your stress levels manageable, basically.
So how is your heart now?
It's okay, I think. I haven't had any angina or any pains since. My blood pressure is low, all my heart rates and everything are low. So I think with regards to the heart attack, I think it's fine as long as I stay on the meds, I think.
Good. Is there anything else that they found?
Yeah, so when they were doing when they were testing at the end to see if I had any damage from the heart attack and to make sure that the blood clot has gone, the consultant just went, oh, and we found an interesting thing. You've got a heart defect. And but he said it in such a blasé kind of way. So I wasn't actually worried, because if he had gone, brace yourself, or I've got some really bad news or something, but he kind of just said it, and then he did what all consultants do, which is get his pad of paper out and start drawing the heart defect. So I've got bicuspid, I think it's bicuspid aortic valve is the thing. I call it bicuspid valve, but your heart valve normally has 3 leaflets or flaps, and it helps pump your blood in and out. And mine's got 2, so they kind of open and close instead of having 3. So I would have been born with it. He said when I was born in the 70s, they wouldn't have even picked up on stuff like that. So that was a bit of a surprise. And if anything, now the treatment is just as much for that as it was for the heart attack, really. But yeah, it's just, he did say it very much like But don't worry about it. We'll get it tested. We'll see how much damage there is. And you kind of go, okay, hopefully not much.
I mean, I'm sure that they mean it with the best will in the world, as in to make you feel confident and not to worry, kind of thing. But actually, they see it a lot. We don't, do we? It's like, and it's
and I was straight on Google, as you are, going, what's a bicuspid valve? And so I've looked up because I do that all the time. I have to know everything about it. So but I've never been overly concerned about it. But when we got back to Bristol, I was transferred back to Bristol, and I then had some follow-up work done on it. So they checked the heart valve, and I got some mild stenosis, which is a thickening of one of the valve, which is fine. When it's only mild, you can pretty much carry on as normal. So that's a good thing. But they did say that it is degenerative, so it will get worse over time, because what happens with bicuspid valve is your heart works harder. So in just pumping your heart around, your heart just is working harder, so it gets worn out faster, basically. So so I've got mild thickening at the minute, but it will get worse over time. So what I'm doing is every 2 years I'm going to go for a checkup, just to make sure, to see how it's progressing, really.
Yeah. Well, we'll keep our fingers crossed on that actually it's very slow and all the meds are doing their job.
Yeah, and that's the thing, actually. They did say if I take all my meds and exercise and look after my heart, that hopefully will slow it enough so that if I do need surgery, and I think 80%, they said, of bicuspid valves do end up needing some form of surgery at some point, it'll be later in life. So I'll be able to have like an animal valve and not a mechanical valve, so I won't have to be on warfarin forever and stuff. So so they just said the longer we can delay it getting that bad, the better, really. So that's kind of my goal now, hopefully.
And exercise makes sense, doesn't it? Because the heart's a muscle and we need to keep our muscles working. But they did say in the hospital that, so when they said about it, they did actually say that having the heart attack probably could have ended up not saving my life as such, but giving me some sort of benefit, because they said if I hadn't have had a heart attack, they probably never would have found the bicuspid valve, which could have caused a heart attack when I was a bit older, and the outcome was more likely to be a lot worse. So actually, I think he said, something like, you're a very lucky young lady or something, because actually we found this and we can now monitor it. So strange how things like that work out. I say that I was lucky that I had a heart attack, because I wouldn't have found my breast cancer if I hadn't. So it's strange, isn't it? We can actually turn some really rubbish stuff round into being positive. So that's good to hear that actually it was worthwhile, even if you were miles and miles from friends and family.
Yeah, it was worth it for the view, and also because they found my bicuspid valve.
So I understand that the bicuspid valve is hereditary. Have you looked into the genetics in your family or anything like that?
Yeah, so we were advised to have first-degree relatives checked, because it can be hereditary. It's not always. So my mum and my two sisters have been checked. They haven't got it. So that's really good. And we are going to get my two children checked. But I think they said the younger the better, because it's easier to see the structures or something. But I'm not overly worried. So I'm just going to wait for COVID to sort of die down a little bit, and then probably get the doctor. So the doctor said she'll refer them. Just waiting for the right time, really. But I will get them checked. We need to know one way or the other.
Do they understand? Do they know? Or is it something that you've not explained to them yet?
They know that I have to take medicine and I have to exercise to keep well. And they know that I need to do it to keep my heart healthy, which is how we've explained it. Haven't really said anything about the bicuspid valve as such, but we probably just will, before, when we've actually booked them in for it, we'll probably just have a word with them and just say that we normally say that I've got a special heart, and then we just need to double check to see whether they do or not, really.
Yeah,
So,
that's a nice way of putting it, a special heart, isn't it? You mentioned that you need to keep your blood pressure low and that exercise is really key for you as well. Were there any other lifestyle changes that you needed to make, such as your diet and mindset? You mentioned stress.
yeah, the diet thing, it was never too bad. I probably eat too much chocolate, but I kind of don't smoke or drink that much, really, so that was okay. So just a standard everybody else, healthy eating, everything within moderation.
Mm-hmm. Including moderation.
Yeah. So there wasn't anything particular. When I went to cardiac rehab, for me, they concentrated mainly on sort of exercise and stress. So we had a discussion about stress, and trying to keep stress levels reduced, which it's not too bad. But I'm my own worst enemy. Seriously, I will literally work really long hours and probably get myself stressed, but it's so much better than it was. And because my blood pressure's low, I think before it was like a cycle where you have headaches all the time and your body feels stressed, then you feel stressed. And, so I think now that I'm not getting headaches all the time and my body doesn't feel that way, I think that has a positive impact on my stress levels as well.
Yeah, self-awareness is, part of the thing. When it gets too much, you need to kind of recognise it, because if you don't know that you're feeling it, you just keep going on. And you're right, vicious circle. It just goes round and round. You need to do something different.
Yeah.
You had your heart attack at work. How did you feel? I mean, it must be, well, work obviously had no doubt whatsoever what had happened to you.
Yeah.
But what was it like for you going back to work and dealing with the HR department and, your manager and that? Because sometimes, I mean, I know myself, I found it really difficult at first. How was it for you?
You're right in that I didn't have to have that discussion, because the woman from HR, my HR business partner, was the woman that called the ambulance. So HR were fully aware, they were there at the time. So I didn't have to have those discussions. But it's dealing with my manager and dealing with HR have been fine. Because I work for the civil service as well, I think I'm lucky in that they kind of are geared up to deal with this sort of thing. My manager is amazing. He actually helped Stu get to London and everything when it first happened. So he's amazing. I had an occupational health referral really quickly. I got an assessment from that. They were then working with me and my managers to do a transition, so a phased return back into work. So that actually for me wasn't a problem as such. So for that, I wasn't that anxious about it. For me, it was the embarrassment, because there was quite a lot of people in the room. Obviously, the message had got round. I had a massive card and loads of flowers from pretty much everybody that I know in work, which is amazing. And it makes you feel amazing, but that means everybody knows about it. So when I first started going back, I'd get loads of people go. So I went back after about 5 weeks, because I got an office job and I felt okay.
Yeah.
Of course, everyone coming up going, "Oh, should you be back?" And "Oh, you look a bit pale. Oh, you're okay." And I actually kind of wanted to forget about it a bit and just kind of, just get back to work. So for me, it was actually, I don't want to call it a stigma because that sounds wrong, but it kind of felt like that to me. I felt a bit embarrassed that I'd had this attack in a meeting. So that was the hardest bit for me about going back to work. But my advice to anybody really would be, HR and your managers are pretty sympathetic. I think you do read some horror stories from people in some of the groups that we're in, that they haven't had a very good experience of it. But I think it'd be a lot worse if you didn't just say if you were having issues or say that you needed help. So that's probably what I would say. Just say if you're tired, and need some help, really.
Yeah. I think the key, I mean, all through my recovery, I found that it was talking and being honest and open about how I was feeling physically and emotionally was the thing that actually got me through. And my experience is similar to yours. My HR department were good. But when they send you to occupational therapy for the assessment, you're like, oh gosh, why are they doing that? The thoughts will go, or they went through my mind anyway, but actually they're on your side because it's about making adjustments, isn't it? So you can go back to work safely and you can continue getting back to a sort of normality because, you know, like you say, it's almost like you want to go, oh, well, that was then, this is now, I'm back.
Yeah.
I've got a reconditioned heart.
Yeah. I'm back and I'm better than ever. But,
absolutely.
But you're right, actually, because there were some times when you would just get tired, and I don't know about you, when you're first on the meds, you just feel sometimes you feel a bit sick and you feel a bit tired. So during those times, it was good to have people in my team that knew, and also I was advised. So I wear a medical alert bracelet because they said, because I'm quite young, if anything happened to me out and about, a heart attack wouldn't be the first thing they would probably consider. I say quite young. For a heart attack is quite young.
Oh, believe me, you're young compared to me.
I'm not in my 20s going around, you know, I'm well aware I'm still in my middle age, but for a heart attack, I'm quite young. So they advised me to wear a medical alert. So they advised me to tell the kind of first aiders at work as well, so that if anything happened to me, they'd know that I had high blood pressure or that I'd had a heart attack and stuff. So I kind of did all of that. So that's also worth people remembering as well, actually, when they're there, is to let the right people know. Because you just never know. But so that's
So did you experience any mental health issues with anxiety, depression, not feeling, you know, yourself about life, or did you find it quite plain sailing?
It's quite weird, actually, that it's quite timely, this podcast, because when I first came out, I actually, because I physically just felt better. So I wasn't as tired. I slept all the way through the hospital because I hadn't been sleeping for a while, and I literally slept all the way through those 6 days. So I actually came out kind of feeling better in a way, tired, but a bit better. So at the beginning, and I had that forced, I had that forced distance from work, so I was out of the stress. So all of that kind of helped. And I had loads of, honestly, I've never felt so loved. I had so many flowers and cards, and it was just that I don't think people realise just how good that makes you, feel. And so I wouldn't say I had mental health issues. I'd say there was a couple of days I felt a bit sorry for myself. Because when I was out walking, as I said, I used to exercise quite a lot, and suddenly I'd find walking around the block exhausting and things. So that I did feel sorry for myself. I'd try to have a word with myself and go, come on, at least you're here. What I kept doing was reminding myself how I felt when they told me, and that split second of, I've got 2 young children.
Yeah.
So that for me was probably as bad as I could feel, having that awful realization that I've had a heart attack with really young kids. But apart from that, no. But the reason I say it's a timely podcast is because just recently, probably in the last 6 months, actually, I started having a couple of nightmares about it, where I dream that my heart is hurting, and then I wake up and go, and I check to make sure everything's okay. And I've cried on the dentist because I had to tell them my medication, and of course they looked at it and went, and straight away they're like, oh, that's like heart medication. And I've cried on the opticians because the same thing. And I cried I cried picking up my meds. Like sometimes I get really upset picking up my meds because I'm like, oh God, I've got to do this, touch wood, for another 40 years. So but that started happening probably in the sort of last 6 months to a year. So it's as if it's a bit delayed.
Yeah.
And I haven't seen anybody about it. I don't know whether I need to. I mean, at the minute it's okay, but I think maybe the novelty's worn off a bit now, and the realization is that this is now it.
Yeah. Yeah. I can identify and understand that completely, because it's like the reality of it comes home when you're having to explain to people, this is what's happened to me, and this is, these are the drugs that I'm going to be on for the rest of my life, sort of thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, and we do believe we're invincible.
Mm.
I can remember, never had any thoughts about any possibility of anything serious happening, because I thought I was going to live forever.
Yeah.
But now it's different, because we realise, that things can change in the blink of an eye. So how do you keep yourself positive and happy and buoyant? Is there anything that you do?
So I think there's some little things that I do, so really stupid things on a daily basis. So I take my aspirin in my favourite vodka shot glass. It's
Yes,
like
girl.
pink. Yeah, so I do that. That's my dispersible aspirin. We started it during COVID, actually, but every day we will go out for like a 10-15 minute walk with the kids, just to get some time. So this is quite new, actually, since my heart attack. I have dedicated sort of kid time where we go out and have some dedicated family time. And I walk around a lot more. Exercise, I think, really helps with that as well, to keep you positive and motivated. But I think for me, I'm quite good at rationalizing things.
Yeah.
I don't dwell on stuff. I'm a bit like, it happened. There's nothing I can do about it. So all I can do is build it into my life now. So where I can, I try not to change my life too much. And I realise I'm really privileged, actually, because I didn't really get any heart damage, and I'm able to kind of to carry on. So I know some people might be thinking, oh God, you're really lucky that you can do that. And I do feel lucky that I can do that. And because of that, I try not to dwell on it, and I just try to normalize it, I guess. And it's happened. It's part of me. There's nothing I can do about it now.
Live your life happy.
Try to.
So is there anything that you'd like to share with our listeners today that might help them in any way, shape or form?
A good vodka shot glass, obviously, because that's what you need for your aspirin.
Yep, I'm on that one now.
You're on that one. I think for me, it's that whole try to just, where you can, look forwards. I know it's really hard for some people, but I do think once something's happened, you can't kind of take it back, and you can't undo something. So try and look forward and say, okay, how can I do something differently? When I was in hospital, there was a woman, an elderly woman, who was about to go and have open heart surgery, and she kept looking outside at the view over the Thames, and she said, oh, she's going for surgery, and she said to me, oh, always take one last look at the view. And then that really resonated with me. And so that's my advice, is always take one last look, always look at what you're doing, and look again, and just really take it in. He was okay, by the way. She was fine, but I got another tip, really, which is watch the Golden Girls. That's my third tip. That always cheers me up. I watch the Golden Girls if I'm feeling depressed.
Yeah, laughter is the greatest healer.
So that's kind of my tips, really.
Okay, you mentioned groups, Facebook groups, obviously, because that's where we kind of met each other. Do you have any favourites?
So there's the Hearties website, the Facebook group, which we're on. I would completely recommend. And there's one that I'm on for. It's called Under 55 Heart Attack. I think so. That's really good, because it is people that were younger when they had their heart attack. So there's some problems that might be quite specific to younger people. They're on there. And one of the things, because I've got kids, one of the things that was really useful for me was it's the British Heart Foundation, and specifically there's a publication called My Dad's Heart Attack, I think it's called, but it's a downloadable book, and it actually, you can read it to your children, and it explains what a heart attack is in a child-friendly way, but actually using the right terminology. So if they hear you mentioning resus, they know what resus is, or they know what cardiac care is, and they know it's a very matter-of-fact book written for a child's mind. And that was really useful for me.
I can imagine as a parent that would be incredibly good, because you don't know how to talk to children, do you, over something that's very grown up. So well, I'll link to all of those in the show note. So I'm going to wrap up now and say thank you ever so much for joining us today, Sarah. It's been really lovely talking to you. I wish you well with the children and having their hearts checked out. And I just say, you are young. Don't do this denial of 45 is nothing.
Oh my God, I feel tired, but yeah, thank you, and thanks for having me on here. It's been really good to talk to you.
You've been listening to Sally Crawley and the My Heart and Mind podcast, a show for you if you've had a heart attack, cardiac event, or other life-changing experience and want to feel good. It's all about mastering your feelings and emotions so you can feel great and live the life you love. To find out more, visit www.myheartandmind.co.uk and note that that's an AND and not the ampersand character. Go be magnificent.